Welcome back to Horror Vault Channel. In this video, I will share with you the 3 most scary deep dark web true horror stories that have already happened with common internet users like you and me in real life. I would highly recommend you to first subscribe to Horror Vault Channel if you haven't done so already. Then you will be the first one to get notifications of our latest true horror story videos. Okay, let us now begin with the first spooky true story. Story 1. The Forum Administrator. My name is Michael Carter, and I've always been fascinated by technology, computers, cybersecurity, coding. I loved it all. I spent my college years learning everything I could about the digital world, and by the time I graduated, I was a self-proclaimed expert in navigating both the surface web and its darker counterpart, the deep web. 2 years ago, I decided to create my own forum on the dark web. It wasn't anything sinister. I envisioned it as a space for people to share uncensored information, journalists, whistleblowers, and anyone who valued privacy. I wanted to build something meaningful, something that stood for freedom in an increasingly surveilled world. At first, everything went smoothly. I set up the forum on an old laptop and ensured it was secure, or so I thought. The site gained traction quickly, attracting users from all over the world. Donations started pouring in through cryptocurrency, and within a few months, I had enough funds to upgrade my setup. I built a new PC specifically for hosting the forum and migrated everything over seamlessly. For nearly a year, things were perfect. The forum grew larger than I ever imagined, and I felt proud of what I had created. But then, strange things began to happen. One evening in July, after returning home from work, I noticed my PC had frozen. At first, I assumed it was a minor glitch, maybe a software bug or an overheating issue. But when I restarted it, the system emitted a series of beeps before refusing to boot up entirely. After hours of troubleshooting, I discovered that one of my RAM modules had been corrupted. I took it back to the store since it was still under warranty. The technician assured me it was likely just a defective part and replaced it without issue. Relieved, I returned home and got the forum back online within hours. But that was only the beginning. A few months later, things escalated. One Friday evening in October, a crisp autumn night, I came home to find an ominous message waiting for me on my computer screen. It wasn't an email or a chat notification. It was a plain text document that had somehow appeared on my desktop. The message read, "We know who you are." My stomach dropped as I stared at those 4 words. Attached to the message was a file containing personal information. My full name, address, bank account details, email passwords, even private messages from my phone. Someone had breached every layer of security I had painstakingly built around myself. Panicking, I immediately disconnected my PC from the internet and turned off my router. But before I could catch my breath, my phone buzzed with a text message. "I see you're trying to hide." My hands shook as another message followed. "Don't bother calling anyone. Just listen." Then my phone rang. I hesitated before answering, but eventually pressed the green button. "Hello." My voice barely came out as a whisper. "Michael," said a distorted voice on the other end. "I know everything about you. Who are you?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. "That's not important." The voice replied coolly. "What matters is what you're going to do next." They demanded 2 Bitcoins, an amount that wasn't insignificant, but one I could afford thanks to the forum's donations. They gave me an address to send the payment and warned me not to involve anyone else. "If you comply," they said, "this will all go away." Desperate to end this nightmare, I transferred the Bitcoins immediately. A few minutes later, another text came through. "Thank you for your cooperation." I sighed in relief, but it didn't last long. "Unfortunately," the text continued, "someone else is very interested in you." Before I could respond or process what that meant, they hung up. That night, sleep eluded me entirely. Every creak of my apartment sounded like footsteps. Every shadow seemed alive with malice. Around 2 a.m., just as exhaustion began to overtake me, loud knocks echoed through my front door. My heart leaped into my throat as adrenaline jolted me awake. Grabbing a kitchen knife for protection, I tiptoed toward the door and peeked through the peephole. A figure stood outside, a man dressed in black with his face obscured by shadows cast from the dim hallway light. When he noticed me looking through the peephole, he stepped back toward his car and drove off into the night. Shaken but curious, I opened the door cautiously and found an envelope lying on my doorstep. Inside were photographs, pictures of me sleeping in someone else's house. I recognized it immediately. It was my friend David's place where I had stayed during a weekend trip months ago. The realization sent chills down my spine. Whoever this person was had been watching me for far longer than I realized. Terrified beyond belief, I called David and explained everything. Together we devised a plan. We would lure the stalker into a trap. The next night we prepared our setup meticulously. Cameras hidden throughout David's house. Pillows arranged under blankets on his bed to mimic someone sleeping. Doors locked except for one left slightly ajar as bait. We didn't have to wait long before hearing faint footsteps approaching around midnight. Through one of our hidden cameras, feeds displayed on David's laptop screen upstairs. We saw him enter cautiously. A tall man wearing gloves holding something metallic glinting under moonlight. A knife, perhaps? As soon as he stepped into David's bedroom thinking he'd cornered his prey, we slammed shut and barricaded door, trapping him inside. Police arrived shortly after arresting intruder whose obsession revealed horrifying details during interrogation. Shrine filled with my photos and had plans of abducting and imprisoning me indefinitely. To this day, I've never returned to dark web nor shared my real identity online again. That's the end of story number 1. What's your thought about this story? Let us know in the comments below. With that, we will now move towards next true horror story. Story 2, The Cannibal's Feast. My name is Ryan Miller, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio where nothing much ever happened. Like most teenagers, I was always looking for ways to entertain myself. My friends and I were obsessed with the internet, spending hours gaming, watching videos, and diving into online rabbit holes. But there was one thing that fascinated us more than anything else, the deep web. It started as a joke. Someone in our group heard about it from an older sibling, and soon it became a dare. If you didn't explore the deep web, you were a coward. It was like an initiation into some exclusive club of internet explorers. Stories of hitmen for hire, secret cults, and illegal marketplaces fueled our curiosity. Everyone claimed they had seen something horrifying, but no one could prove it. Eventually, the pressure got to me. I had to see it for myself. I remember that night vividly. It was the month of December, a cold Monday evening. My parents were out of town, and I had the house to myself. I sat in my dimly lit bedroom with my laptop in front of me, my heart pounding as I downloaded Tor browser and set up a VPN. My friends had given me a list of links to check out, starting with something called the Hidden Wiki, a directory of deep websites. The first few links were harmless enough. Forums discussing conspiracy theories and strange blogs about time travel. I laughed at how ridiculous some of it was. But then I stumbled upon something darker, a forum dedicated to cannibalism. At first, I thought it was a joke, a bunch of weirdos role-playing online. But as I scrolled through the posts, my stomach turned. People were sharing recipes for cooking human flesh and discussing their experiences in graphic detail. One user even posted photos of what they claimed was their latest meal. The images were blurry but unmistakably grotesque. I should have stopped there. Every instinct told me to close my laptop and walk away. But curiosity got the better of me. One post caught my eye. Join us for the Divine Feast. It included a link to a private site called Goodnight.com. My hands trembled as I clicked on it. The page loaded slowly, revealing a simple black background with white text. Welcome to the Divine Feast, where true connoisseurs gather. Below there was a list of videos available for purchase or live streaming. The titles made my skin crawl. Fresh Cuts, Dinner with Friends, and the Divine Feast. Live. Against my better judgment, I clicked on the live stream. The screen went dark for a moment before flickering to life. The camera showed a dimly lit room with a long wooden table at its center. Several people sat around it wearing masks, some resembling animals, others grotesque caricatures of human faces. In front of them were plates piled high with what looked like raw meat. A man dressed as a chef entered the frame, holding a large cleaver in one hand and dragging something behind him with the other. My heart stopped when I realized what it was: a person. The victim was bound and gagged, their eyes wide with terror as they struggled against their restraints. The chef placed them on the table like they were nothing more than an object and began addressing the audience in an eerily cheerful tone. "Welcome, esteemed guests," he said, his voice muffled by his mask. "Tonight's feast is truly special. A young man in his prime, tender and full of flavor." I felt sick but couldn't look away. The chef raised his cleaver high above his head and brought it down with brutal force. The screen went black for a moment before cutting to another angle, a close-up of the diners eagerly devouring their meals. I slammed my laptop shut and ran to the bathroom, vomiting into the sink as tears streamed down my face. What had I just witnessed? Was this real, or some twisted performance art? I spent the rest of the night pacing around my room, too afraid to sleep or even turn on my laptop again. But it wasn't over. The next morning, I woke up to find an email in my inbox from an unknown sender. "Did you enjoy the show?" Attached was a screenshot from the live stream. My horrified face reflected in my laptop screen as I watched the video. Panic set in as I realized someone had hacked into my webcam and been watching me all along. I deleted everything related to Tor browser and wiped my hard drive clean, but the messages kept coming. Cryptic emails filled with threats and taunts. "You're one of us now. Don't try to run. We're always watching." One night, as I lay in bed trying to calm myself down, I heard footsteps outside my window. My bedroom is on the second floor. There's no way anyone could be out there without climbing gear or a ladder. I grabbed my phone and called 911, but by the time the police arrived, whoever was had vanished without a trace. For weeks after that incident, I lived in constant fear, jumping at every sound and checking over my shoulder wherever I went. My grades slipped. My social life fell apart. Even leaving the house felt like stepping into enemy territory. Eventually, I decided enough was enough. I packed up everything I owned and moved across the country without telling anyone where I was going except for my parents. It's been years since that nightmarish experience on the deep web, but even now, every time I see an email from an unknown sender or hear footsteps outside at night, that same cold dread washes over me all over again. If there's one thing you take away from this story, let it be this: some doors are better left unopened, and some things are better left unseen. Stay away from places you don't belong, because once you step into darkness, it might never let you go. That's the end of story number 2. Do share your thoughts about this story in the comments section. And now we will move towards the final story of this video. Story 3. They were watching. My name is Alex Harper. I'm 28 years old, and I've always had a knack for computers. Ever since I was a kid, I loved tinkering with old machines, fixing bugs, and figuring out how things worked. It's no surprise that I ended up in IT, working as a freelance technician for small businesses and individuals. Most of the time, my job is mundane: fixing internet connections, removing malware, or setting up networks. But one job changed my life forever. It was a cold February afternoon when I got a call from a small local business. The man on the other end sounded frustrated. "Our internet's down," he said curtly. "We think it's a virus or something. Can you come take a look?" I agreed to stop by after finishing another appointment. When I arrived at the office, the man, Mr. Davis, was waiting for me at the door. He was in his late 50s, balding, with thick glasses perched on his nose. He seemed agitated as he led me to the back office where their main computer was located. "I don't know what's wrong," he muttered as I set up my laptop next to his desktop. "The internet just stopped working this morning." I nodded and got to work. The first thing I noticed was that the computer wasn't connected to any network. Strange. I checked for available Wi-Fi connections and found several encrypted networks nearby, but none matched their usual setup. Then I saw it. A strange network with no encryption, just a random string of letters and numbers as its name. It didn't belong to Mr. Davis or anyone else in the building. Curiosity got the better of me. I connected to the network using my laptop, thinking it might be an open hotspot someone had accidentally left unsecured. As soon as I connected, my screen flickered for a moment before returning to normal. "Just give me a few minutes," I told Mr. Davis as he hovered nearby. He nodded and left the room, muttering something about needing coffee. I opened my browser to test the connection, but instead of loading Google like it usually would, the screen went black for a moment before displaying a single line of text. "Do not proceed." I froze. At first, I thought it was some sort of prank, a default message from whoever owned this strange network. But then another message appeared. "You've been warned." A chill ran down my spine. I tried disconnecting from the network, but nothing happened. My laptop wouldn't respond to any commands. The cursor moved on its own, as if someone else were controlling it. Before I could process what was happening, my webcam light flickered on. My heart sank. "Hello," I said aloud, even though no one was in the room with me. The screen changed again, this time displaying live footage from my own webcam. There I was, sitting at the desk, staring wide-eyed at the screen like an idiot. Then came another message. "We're watching you." Panic set in as I slammed my laptop shut and yanked out its battery to kill whatever had taken control of it. My hands were shaking as I tried to compose myself. "It's just some hacker," I whispered to myself. Nothing to freak out about, but deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. I packed up my things and told Mr. Davis that his internet issue was beyond what I could fix on-site. He seemed annoyed but didn't press me for details. When I got home that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My laptop sat on my desk like a ticking time bomb. I didn't dare turn it back on. Instead, I grabbed an old desktop computer from storage and set it up in my living room. It wasn't connected to any networks yet. I wanted to make sure everything was secure before going online again. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from an address I didn't recognize. Unknown@nowhere.com. The subject line read, "You shouldn't have done that." I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single sentence. "We know where you are." Attached to the email was a photo of me sitting at Mr. Davis's desk earlier that day, taken from my own webcam. My stomach churned as fear gripped me like never before. How had they gotten access to my camera? How did they know where I worked? I spent hours researching ways to secure my devices, installing firewalls, updating software, but nothing eased my paranoia. The next day brought more unsettling events. While driving home from another job, I noticed a black SUV following me through town. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, until it followed me all the way into my neighborhood and parked down the street from my house. I locked all the doors and closed every curtain in my home that night. Around midnight came another email. "We're closer than you think." This time there was no photo attached, just those chilling words staring back at me from the screen like an accusation. Sleep eluded me as every creak and groan in my house made me jump out of bed with fear that someone had broken in. By morning, exhaustion had taken its toll on both body and mind. But things only got worse when another message arrived while eating breakfast. "Look outside," against every instinct screaming at me not to do so. I peeked through one of the curtains, only to see nothing unusual except for that same black SUV parked down by corner lot again, watching, silently waiting. Over the next several days, weeks and months, paranoia consumed my life completely, spiraling downward uncontrollably, unraveling sanity piece by piece. And that's the end of these scary, deep, dark web true horror stories. What do you think about these horror stories? Let us know your opinion in the comment box below. And don't forget to subscribe to Horror Vault to keep watching our upcoming videos with such interesting content. I will see you in the next video.